It started as a regular day in a quiet neighborhood until a routine interaction between a citizen and two officers quickly escalated into something much bigger. The citizen, calm but firm, was stopped and confronted by officers who issued questionable directives, claiming to enforce the law. What the officers didn't expect was that this individual wasn't just anyone. They knew their rights inside out. As tensions grew, the officers stood their ground, confident in their authority. But the citizens' calm and informed responses began to expose cracks in their approach. A crowd started to gather, cameras rolling, as the confrontation turned into a lesson neither side would soon forget. Were the officers in the right? Or would this moment prove to be a powerful reminder that authority doesn't always mean knowledge? Stay tuned as this encounter unfolds, revealing the unexpected twists and truths that left everyone involved stunned. The officers had stopped the citizen for what they described as a suspicious activity, but the details were vague. The citizen, a middle-aged man carrying nothing more than a backpack, politely asked for clarification. His tone was calm, but his words were precise, each question carefully probing the officer's justification. The officers, visibly uncomfortable, doubled down, insisting they had the right to detain him and demanding compliance. The man, however, wasn't rattled. He calmly explained his rights, citing laws and court rulings that seemed to catch the officers off guard. Their stern expressions wavered, though they maintained their authority, warning him to stop resisting. Meanwhile, the small crowd that had gathered began whispering among themselves. "He seems to know what he's talking about," someone said. Phones were now pointed at the scene, recording every word. The tension was palpable. Who would back down first? Or was this confrontation far from over? The officers' frustration began to show. One of them stepped closer to the man, speaking with a tone that was more forceful now. "We're giving you a lawful order. You need to comply." But the man didn't flinch. Instead, he calmly asked, "What specific law am I breaking?" The officer hesitated, glancing at his partner for support. It was clear they hadn't expected anyone to challenge them this way, especially not with the level of knowledge this man seemed to have. The partner, now visibly annoyed, attempted to shift the focus. "Let's see some ID," he demanded, trying to regain control. The man paused for a moment before responding, "Am I being detained or am I free to go?" This question, simple yet loaded, hung in the air. The crowd grew larger, some murmuring words of encouragement, while others whispered nervously. The officers exchanged a look, but before they could answer, someone from the crowd stepped forward. It was an older woman who had been quietly watching from the sidelines. "I've lived in this neighborhood for years," she said firmly. "What exactly did he do wrong?" Her voice carried both concern and curiosity, adding another layer of tension to the standoff. All eyes were now on the officers, waiting for their next move. The officers stood there for a moment, locked in a silent standoff with the man and the growing crowd. The air felt heavy with anticipation, as if everyone knew something was about to snap. The officer who had been leading the confrontation took a step back, his hand twitching near his radio. But he didn't make a move to call for backup, yet. His partner, who had been increasingly tense, finally broke the silence. "We can do this the hard way," he said, his voice barely masking the frustration bubbling beneath. But before the situation could escalate further, the crowd shifted. More people started to speak up, questioning the officer's authority, asking why they weren't simply letting the man go. The older woman who had spoken earlier was now joined by others. Some were asking for badge numbers, others questioning the need for an ID check. The tension was palpable, the stakes growing higher with each passing second. The man remained calm, his eyes scanning the officers for any signs of weakness, any crack in their resolve. "Am I free to leave?" he asked again, his voice steady, the crowd's anxiety mixed with the officer's uncertainty. Whatever was coming next, it was clear that things were about to get a lot more complicated. The police cruiser door swung open, and a third officer stepped out. Unlike the others, this one seemed calm, almost calculating, as he assessed the scene. He glanced at the crowd, the man, and the officers, taking in every detail without saying a word. The tension shifted instantly. This officer carried an authority that silenced even the murmurs from the crowd. The first officer approached him quickly, whispering something in his ear. The new arrival's expression didn't change, but his eyes fixed on the man at the center of the standoff. "I hear you've got a lot to say about the law," he finally said, his voice measured. "Let's see if you're as smart as you think you are." His words, though calm, had an edge that hinted at a challenge. The man didn't hesitate. "I don't think I'm smart. I just know my rights," he replied evenly. He stood his ground, though it was clear he was trying to gauge what this new officer would do. The crowd, emboldened by the earlier exchanges, began to murmur again, questioning why backup had been called for something so minor. But then the unexpected happened. A voice from the crowd called out, "He's right, you know." "I saw the same thing happen to my brother last month, and they had no case." Heads turned to see a young man holding up his phone. "And I have it on video." The crowd erupted, some demanding answers from the officers, others urging the man to keep standing his ground. The officer who had just arrived raised his hand to quiet the noise, but the atmosphere was shifting rapidly. What had started as a simple confrontation was now spiraling into a full-blown public spectacle. It was clear the officers were losing control of the situation. But what neither the man nor the crowd expected was the sudden announcement from the calm officer. "If you think you're in the right, maybe we should take this to court. You willing to fight this all the way?" The question hung heavy in the air, carrying implications no one had anticipated. The stakes had just been raised, and there was no turning back now. The man stood silently for a moment, considering the officer's challenge. The crowd was now completely focused, waiting to see what he would say. Finally, he nodded. "If that's what it takes to prove a point that the law applies to everyone, even those who enforce it, then yes, let's take it to court." His voice carried conviction, and the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. The calm officer smirked slightly, almost as if he respected the man's resolve. But before anyone could react further, the young man in the crowd with the phone stepped forward, waving it in the air. "You won't need court to prove this one," he said. "I've been recording everything since the moment you stopped him. And guess what? You've been wrong this whole time." The officers froze. The crowd pressed in closer, eager to see what evidence was about to be revealed. The man took a step back, letting the young man take center stage. With a tap on his phone, the video began playing, clear footage of the officers confronting the man, issuing contradictory statements, and failing to provide any lawful reason for detaining him. The tension in the air shattered as the calm officer's expression shifted. He motioned for the other two officers to step aside and then address the man directly. "It appears we've made a mistake," he said, his tone noticeably more restrained. "You're free to go." But just as the man turned to leave, the calm officer added, "This doesn't mean this is over." The crowd murmured, sensing another layer to the story. The man stopped, glanced back, and said, "Oh, it's over for now. But trust me, the truth always finds its way out." As the man walked away, the crowd began dispersing, their voices buzzing with everything they'd just witnessed. The officers retreated to their cruiser, their authority visibly shaken. But as the car pulled away, the young man with the phone caught up to the man and said, "Thank you for staying calm." A lot of people would have lost it back there. The man smiled and replied, It's not about winning an argument. It's about knowing the truth and standing by it. By the next day, the video had started circulating online, sparking discussions about accountability, the importance of knowing your rights, and the power of community. While the confrontation was over, its message would resonate far beyond that moment, a reminder that knowledge and courage can make all the difference.